All right, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Meredith. I am one of the librarians at Plano Public Libraries. Today, helping me in the chats will be Jamie. She's also at the same building with me over at Harrington. And then we have a few other moderators that can help with technical questions that you may have. So if you have any questions that do come up during your time with us today, please type those in the chat and we will address them as best we can. So let's get started. So I'm going to do a quick overview of what Google Docs is, and then I have a question on how you guys plan to use it. So think about that as we go over it. So what is Google Docs? It is a web application or web app for word processing, which is the text to documents, very similar to Microsoft Word, which a lot of us have used regularly in work and our daily life. So it's great for creating and editing documents in a web browser or on a mobile app that exists. You can get that on, I believe, any device, be it Apple, Android, or other. You must have a Google account to utilize Docs. So if you've already got a Gmail, you've got a Google account. You are ready to go. If you haven't got one of those yet, it's really easy to sign up for. They are free, and it gives you access through Google Drive and all of the other various web applications that they have. So you can also edit Word documents directly or convert them to doc formats that allow you to edit in the web browser. Docs files can also be converted back into Word format, and we'll cover a bit of how to do that later. So some uses at work, you might use it for meeting notes, proposals, reports. You can use it in your job searching for resumes, cover letters, thank you emails that you need to type up. You can also use it in writing for outlines, brainstorming, and creating manuscripts. Also, schoolwork, you can use it for writing research papers and the like. So let's go ahead and do our first poll. And
right.
yeah.
So you should now see a poll on your screen. We're just asking you to consider how you plan to use Docs, whether that's for personal use, for work use, for school, or you're just not sure yet how you might be using it. We'll give this just a couple of seconds longer to give everyone a chance to go ahead and vote.
And I do believe this one you can select multiple options, correct?
Yes.
So don't feel pigeonholed into picking one or the other if you're not sure. Select anything that applies.
All right, looks like we have about 90% reporting, so we'll give it just a few seconds longer. And I am going to go ahead and end so that we can see the results.
All right, so it looks like a majority of you are planning on using it for personal use. And if you'd like to share, if you feel comfortable doing so, what kind of personal use you're planning on doing, you can put that in the chat. I'd love to see what kind of varied purposes you're planning. A few for work, a couple for school, and then we've got a few not sures. And I'm hoping by the end of this program, we'll have those not sures figuring out what exactly they want to use it for. So the great thing about Google Docs is just like Microsoft Word, it is very versatile. So you can use it for a lot of different things. And let me get going here. So what I've got on screen right now is the Google Docs specific web page that gives you access, but you can access Google Docs from just about anywhere. If you happen to work in a Chrome browser, then you have easy access to all of the Google apps through the little, what do you call that, a grid, I guess, dot grid. of Google Apps up at the top, and you can click on that and you can scroll down to Docs. If you don't have this particular feature, if you're working from a different browser, there's still a few ways to get to it. You can go through Google Drive as well as the Google Docs web address. So these both get you to where you can look at your documents. So the difference between the two is Google Drive is really the storage for all of your stuff, whereas Google Docs does give you a specific view of the documents that you have, but it's also kind of the launch pad for getting into the actual app. So let's get started with creating a document. And I'm going to show you how to create a document from both Drive and Docs, because you can do so both ways, and like to give you the options of what would work best from you. So if you happen to be starting from Google Docs, it's very simple to get started. You have Start New Document right here at the tippy top, and it gives you some options. You can start with a blank document, or you can use templates. And what it'll typically show you at the top is stuff that it tries to think is relevant for you. Since I've looked at a lot of different resume formats, that's what it's sharing, but you can also extend it by clicking on the template gallery here, and that'll show you all of the available templates. Now, one difference between Docs and Word is Word has a much more diverse set of templates available, just because of how long it's been around. Google Docs is fairly new in the grand scheme of technology, so their selections are a little more limited. As you can see, they've got just a few resume options up top, a few letter options, and then some more variety down here. But it is a little more limited than what you'd find in Microsoft selections. So moving over to your other option, you've got from My Drive, which is the Google Drive Launchpad. You've got New, which is a little button over the side here, and you click on that, and you can come down here. Now, if you click on just this part, it'll automatically open a blank document. But if you want options, you can come over to the arrow, and it'll give you options here. If you were to click from a template, it would redirect you to the template gallery where you can choose, which is the same as our extended version from Docs. And this little thing is hard to get to with the drop down. One moment. We'll just leave it up. So moving on, those are a few options there. If you have an existing file that you want to open, we'll start over here at Docs. It provides a list of recent documents that are available down here, and you can see all the ones that I've worked on, which are quite a few. Now, you can filter what you're looking for. So right now I have all of the documents that I have access to, both ones that I have created and ones that others have shared with me. If you want to just see the ones that you've made, you can go to Owned by Me, and that limits your selection to just the documents that you personally have created. If you want a more traditional look to how you find your documents, you can also come over to the Open File Picker, which looks a lot more similar to how you'd find a document through Word. And it shows you different folders that are available where you can find documents, and then it has them listed down here, and you have some options that you can look through for stuff. If you're doing an opening of files from Drive, it can be a little more complicated depending on how you have your things arranged. If all of your documents that you're wanting to work with are in a single folder, then you can just click on that folder and open it up, and it'll be in there. But if your stuff is kind of scattered throughout, you can limit what you're looking for by coming to the search bar up here and clicking on Documents, and that'll just show you the documents that are available on your drive. And that is a good way to limit what you're looking for so you can work with it. Any questions so far?
We do have one question related to templates. We have someone who's curious if you can make and save your own templates as part of Google Docs.
So this one I don't have as much experience with. basically what you can do is you can save a file and use that as a template, and then make copies off of it to fill in, and leaving that one untouched leaves it as a template. Now, the template gallery is what's available to the public, to basically anyone who has access to docs. So as of right now, I do not think they have a way to share templates that you create. These are all ones that have been provided by Google. But you can, in essence, make your own template just by creating a document that you leave blank and make copies of for filling in purposes. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay.
So we have a
Awesome.
couple of other questions for some things we haven't quite gotten to yet. One is going to be related to adding pictures to a Google Doc, which I believe we're going to do in a little bit.
Correct.
Okay, so we're going to pause on that one, but we will get back to it. And then we have some questions that are related to sharing, but I'm going to hold off on those until we get into document sharing as well.
No problem. And I see a question about logging into Google account. If you're wanting to follow along with us and have the capacity to do so, then I do recommend going ahead and logging into your Google account, because you can follow along with what we do. I myself am very much a hands-on learner, so being able to click at the same time that I'm being told to click really helps. But if you don't have the capability to do that now, this presentation is being recorded, so you can always go back and refer to it later. So getting back onto our opening documents. So another thing to cover, switching over to our drive, back over to our drive, is the view that you first get on here. I want to back that up just so that we have a quick explanation of quick access. So quick access is going to be documents. There's an algorithm that Google Drive uses, which is a fancy term for a bunch of requirements that it checks off. And if those documents are usually opened often or relevant to what you're working on, and it correlates that, then you get those popping up here in the quick access. It's not going to be the stuff you necessarily have most recently worked on. It's more often stuff that you open very regularly. If you are wanting to look at stuff that you have recently opened, there's a tab for that over here that says recent, and you can click on that. And it'll show you what you've opened recently, and also gives you a tiny timeline of when it is. So last week I opened these, earlier in the month, and then it goes further back. So that's a helpful way of finding your documents. And then our last thing that we're going to cover as far as getting started with opening up documents is how to import files. So this is super handy for if, say, you started working on something in Word, but you realize that you need to work on it on the go. So coming back over to our Google Docs, if you want to upload something, you can easily do that with, actually, it's been a while since I've done this. I realize I'm not sure if I can do it from this one. I think, yes, you have to do it from Drive. Apologize for that. You go to New and File Uploader, and this is on Drive. And so if you're wanting to find something you can upload, see if I've got anything good on here to share. Here we go. So I'm wanting to work on a document for information for our staff. So I can upload that, and it'll show you uploading here. And how you can tell whether or not it's a Word document that's been uploaded versus a Docs document that's already on there is the icon. You get a lovely little square here with a W, and the Docs document is a square with the little bars that represent text. So you can actually open this and work on it in Docs. So if you click on it, you'll get a view here. This is a double click to get the preview, and then you can open it. Or you can go straight from here and right click it and go to open with Google Docs. And it doesn't have to convert to allow you to open it. Now, sometimes the formatting will show up a little differently, like this one, the bullet points on the side did a little bit of a weird thing. And that's just the complication of communication between two different programs that aren't 100% compatible. They're fairly close, but they will get some things wrong from time to time. So just to make sure you know that you're working in a Google Doc, it has the extension up here, so .docx, which lets you know that it is still a Microsoft document. It has not been converted. But if you don't anticipate downloading it or you want to work specifically in the Google Docs format, you can actually convert this as well. Let me back over here. So you can make a copy. Actually, I'm sorry, I'm having a mental day here. You can come over to Files and save as a Google Doc. There we go. Having one of those brain days. So you can save your file as a Google Doc. And when you do that, it actually makes a duplicate. It does not override your original. So this is one way that if you want to be able to look at the changes you've made between documents, you can. So we've got all of that there. We'll bounce back over here. And some other ways I did forget to mention, there are some ways of sorting your files for opening purposes, and I want to share those because it can be handy. So if you are more of a visual person, the preview grid here is a great way to find stuff. But if you're wanting to make it a little more compact, if you have a lot of documents to look through, the list view is really handy because it boils it down to just the name of the document, when you opened it. And if you've got more than one option, if you've opened up this to owned by anyone, it lets you know who owns that document. So this is a great way to quickly scroll through your documents if you've got a whole bunch that you're looking to open. All right, any other questions that I can answer before we move on to the editing?
A quick update on our templates. If you choose to purchase the G Suite account with a monthly fee associated with it, you do have the option to make and save your own templates.
Ah, there we go.
But you will.
That is the not free option.
That is not a free option. And then we did have one request to show again how to search in Google Docs.
Oh, sure, absolutely. So it's search in Google Docs or Google Drive? I can do both. If you're wanting to search in Docs, it's right up at the top, and because you've already got the designation of this is just Docs, you don't have to specify the file type. And you can go, I'm trying to think of a good example. I don't have one on the tip of my tongue, but let's just see what we've got that is resume specific in my files. So if you do a search, it'll pull up all the stuff that is resume specific. Now it does also then have underneath the other documents, but your top results are up here. From Drive, you are going to want to specify documents so that it doesn't look at any of your other stuff like PDFs or other things that you have uploaded. And then you can also add in, I believe, let's experiment here, shall we? There we go. So that'll give you your search results of resume specific stuff. I believe this info-based one pops up because it actually has resumes listed inside the document. So that is how you can do searches for your files that you're trying to look for. All right, did that cover it?
I believe so.
Okay, good, good. And we will continue on. All right, so getting into editing and formatting documents. So we're going to be looking at Google Docs in reference to resume templates, just because that kind of gives us some context. But we can talk about all sorts of other things. So with resumes, the templates that are available are varying in style. I think most of them fall under the type known as a combo, which is a combination of chronological listing of work experience and a combination with listing of skills. So they kind of merge them together. And this is a fairly common style that's come up because it allows you to get very specific with your resumes. So we'll open up one here. We'll start a new one. And it opens it up. And all of the templates on here have kind of random, and this is, if you're wondering, the random filled in text here is Latin, but that's stuff that you'll just delete and get rid of. So looking at this, we can rename our document because resume is not particularly descriptive. So we're going to name it career change resume because we're changing our career, we're branching out. And maybe we want to give it a date so that we know when we worked on it. So let's see, what is today's date? 8/17, so 8/17/2020. That way we know exactly when we got started on this. And that is all you have to do to rename it. It's very simple. You click up there, you type, and you come down. And it automatically changes the name. So if you're wanting to change information in the body, which is the main part of your document, you can come in here for this one. Say I was wanting to change my name to my actual name. So you can easily type in just like you would any other document. You just click and type. If you want to delete, you can highlight it and hit delete. You can also right-click in the document and it'll give you options, very much like Microsoft Word. And something you may want to do, probably not with a resume, but maybe with other documents. You can use it with a resume if you get into multiple pages. It's actually highly encouraged that you have page numbers. So if we wanted to get page numbers, we can come over here. Now you have to actually insert a header and footer, unlike Microsoft Word, where you just kind of click into the area where it would be. So that's a slight difference, and we want to add a footer here. And so now we have an area we can type in for our footer. There are some options. You can do page numbers, and you always want to start on page 1 unless you have a cover page, and that'll automatically put it in there. If you are done with your footer, go back to the body and start typing, but oh, I need to type in my footer again, you can double click on it and it'll open back up. So the big difference between this and Microsoft Word is that Microsoft Word already kind of provides the header and footer space, and you can decide whether or not you want to utilize it, whereas Google Docs, you actually have to put it in before you can start utilizing it. So any questions so far? I know this is kind of really the basic stuff. Copying and pasting works very similar to Microsoft Word. You can highlight and you can either right click and utilize these tools here, or you can use the shortcuts which are shown over here. So you can do Control-C for copy, Control-X for cut, and Control-V for paste. And these are exactly the same shortcuts that are used with Word and other text editing applications. So if we were to cut it, gets rid of it, very straightforward. Cut is a great feature if this is something you're not familiar with. Cut allows you to delete and copy at the same time. So if, say, you realized that you typed all of this stuff in here, but it actually needed to go down to your other job, you want to get rid of it and move it at the same time, you can cut it and then come down here and paste it, and there it is. And you only have to use one shortcut or one drop-down menu selection to get that where you need it to be. So moving on, something to know in relation to resumes, since we're already in here, is you want to make sure that your name and contact information are a little bit more prominent than the rest of the information on there, which may mean bolding it or making it a few sizes bigger. And you also want to make sure to keep it updated. It is super important to keep that regularly updated. So let's get into customizing our document a little bit. So this template here comes with pre-selected fonts, but let's open a new document just to show you what the defaults look like. So click on that. So our untitled, brand new, never before used blank document is going to default to Arial and 11 fonts. And these are pretty standard font styles and sizes, but you can always change it up if you have a personal preference. So if you want to change the font, you can, of course, use the standard drop down to select what you want here. There are also secondary menus. So this is a little different than Word. With Word, if you wanted a specific variation of a font, usually they have each one listed out, or they have the options available through the font formatting tab. This one actually has little pop-up options for picking different variations of some of their fonts. So you can really get a lot of variety with your fonts. Now, if you're doing something professional or something like a resume, you are going to want to stick to the easier to read fonts. And this usually means that they are sans serif, which means none of the curly cues, just the straight lines. And you also want to pick something that is kind of bold and easy to read. So typically that means Arial, Calibri, Verandan, there's a whole bunch of them. So Arial never fails. It's a nice, clean font you can use. Font sizes, that really is up to what you need to use it for. I am partial to 12 because that makes it a little bigger and easier to read, but really you can adjust as much as you need. And you get suggestions here, but you can always get more specific by typing in the exact number you want. So if you say you wanted 15 font, it's not on the list, but you can type it in and it'll change it to 15 for you. So. And of course, you can also highlight and adjust your font by coming into paragraph styles. So paragraph styles is a nice way to keep things uniform. So this has pre-designated options for headers of certain sizes, titles of certain sizes, and what your font is. You can change your styles so that you have consistent ones that you can apply. And this way you don't have to constantly be finding what that specific font you used was. You just click this and it automatically applies it. So that's an option for if you're wanting to use very specific, consistent font styles. Any questions?
Looks like we have a question related to some formatting in regards to columns and pictures. So we have someone who has uploaded a document where the original has 2 columns and pictures and is only 15 pages, but it didn't translate well when it was uploaded and the columns are out of balance and now the document is 73 pages. So can you talk a little bit about how we would adjust our columns and our page count?
Sure, I can jump ahead to columns and then we can go back to the other objects that or other topics I was going to cover. That's an easy enough one to cover. So And without being able to see the document exactly, it could be a few different things that are off. So with columns, you can come up here and it's under formats. You can do columns of all sorts of sizes. It has 3 options right here, and these are kind of the quick go-to options, but you can go to more options, which gives you a little more control over what you do with those columns. So got different spacing. 3 is the maximum you can do on docs. So, and then it kind of makes sense, especially with your typical page. If you had more columns than that, you wouldn't be able to fit much text on it, but it is a little bit more limiting than Word. You can have spacing between your columns, which makes it visually distinctive. So if the column numbers are correct, but it's longer, it may be that the spacing needs to either be, well, for too many pages, needs to be reduced. And then this option here is just a visual aesthetic type thing. It's lines between columns, so it'll actually put a literal line going between the columns rather than leaving just the blank space to delineate the 2 columns. Now this one only shows up after you've actually got 2 pages worth of text. So I'll actually demonstrate it. It doesn't take too long to get there. So just hit the enter until we get all the way to the bottom of our first column, and poof, there it goes. We've got our line that's popped up. You can also, once you have columns set up, you can adjust your width directly here. Now this is a little less precise because you're just dragging it, whereas if you were to go to the back up to the options here, you can type in exactly how many inches you want. So the dragging is where you get a little less control, but it can be helpful to see the difference visually. Another problem that may be causing the columns to get longer is the margins. So we can look at that real quick too, because if the margins on the incoming document were narrower than the current document, then that's going to push your text together more and extend the pages. So you can come up here to format and get into, excuse me, why am I not able to find where the margins went to? I'm having a day. Here we go. Well, you can definitely easily adjust your margins over here by sliding. There we go. And you can do that on both sides. And then, let's see, where's my page set up on here? Jamie, I am having a mental day. Where is the margins on this thing?
File and page setup.
There we go. Thank you. Down here at the bottom. Yes. Okay, so if you're wanting to get more exact, again, the ruler is not an exact way to maneuver. If you're wanting to get very precise with your margins, you can come in here and adjust your top and bottom, side to side. And this one might be what you need to do to get your page to fit more like the original document that you were getting it from. The default is going to be 1 inch by 1 inch by 1 inch, and this is kind of the standard across most professional realms, school, etc. Sometimes you need different margins for what you're working on, and you can definitely change those to work. If you're working on a resume, really the 1 inch by 1 inch by 1 inch is the way to go, but you can make slight adjustments so that you fit into that 1 page or 2 page limit that you're trying to go for. You just want to stay no farther than a ½ inch down and no more than 1.5 inches of margin space, because otherwise it starts being really noticeable that you've messed with the margins, and then they start to wonder why. Okay, and then bouncing back to some of the other stuff I was going to cover, we've got inserting items into your document. So this is going to be something that's a little less common if you're working on a resume, but hey, you might want to insert, maybe you want a little headshot picture if that's something that matters, like you're going into a service industry where you want them to be able to see your face, you can definitely do that. I don't have a good headshot picture, so I'm just going to insert something else entirely, but we'll show you that. Inserting documents, images, tables, whatever you want to insert is going to be under the Insert drop-down menu. And then images, you can upload from your computer, and you can also search the web, and you can access other options. Now, camera only works if you have a camera connected to your computer, or if you're using something like your cell phone or tablet that has a built-in camera. But you can use these other options to get to various things. So if you're uploading, it will go to your usual PC style file retrieval. And let's say we're wanting some nice autumn leaves. Hit open, and it inserts it there. And you can adjust the size. Now with columns, it's going to limit it to the column size here. So let's undo our columns so we have a little more flexibility. So columns, we don't want columns anymore. And this one automatically did a page break, or I guess section break, not a page break, to allow columns to continue underneath. If you want absolutely no columns at all, you have to highlight the whole thing and no columns. The columns are all gone now. I'll get back into columns again because there are some nice quirks on that one, but let's cover images before we go back. So you can adjust the size of your image here, like that. You can choose, it has 3 options for how you insert your image, which is slightly more limiting than Word, but it tends to be easy to work with. The inline means that your picture is literally in line with your text. So you say, you can see the cursor moves on either side. You can type and it'll put text on either side. If you hit enter, it'll go to the next line. The other option is to wrap the text around, which means that depending on where you have it situated in the document, the text will flow around the image. And then you also have the option of breaking the text. So depending on where you put it, the text will either be above and below it. You can also give it a little bit of margins. If you want your font right up against it, you can do that. But you can also spread it out and have more space around the image. So you can mess with that here. You can also customize it. And when you click the customize, it does a little pop-up option here. So this is the formatting we were looking on for the image, but you can also mess with where exactly it's located in the paragraph, whether or not it moves with the text or stays on the page. And this is an option that's only available if it's not in line with text, I believe. Yeah, positioning, if it's in line with text, it stays with the text. If you use these other 2 styles, then you get to have some options with how it moves with the text. You can also mess a little bit with the colors, and you can, depending on the type of image, you can adjust some of the brightness and contrast and stuff. It's not a photo editor by any stretch of the imagination, but say it comes up and it's a little darker than you expected, you can tweak it a tiny bit there. And you can also get very specific with your size. If you're wanting it to not end up distorted, like with this picture, you don't want to stretch it and end up with super wide trees that look bizarre. You use lock aspect ratio, and this makes sure that when you stretch it one way, it stretches the other, and it keeps it uniform. If you don't have that locked, then you can get very interesting sizes. You can also rotate it here. And then you close it out. When working with an image, you also have some of the shortcut tools up at the top here. Your standard undo, redo, which will be there for text as well. But you get some things like being able to crop the image and reset it back to its original size and shape, and you can also choose to replace the image. So say you have it exactly the right place, exactly the right size, but you realize you've used the wrong image. Replacing it will take the new image and put it exactly where you had it before at exactly the same size. So that's a good option for if you realized, ooh, I grabbed the unedited version of this image and I need the edited one. It's a good choice for that. Since we're already here, we'll look at some of the other options. So inserting, you can also insert a table, and you can pick the size of table that you want to insert by dragging your mouse. So you can extend it out fairly far, all the way up to 20. And you can also likewise extend it down. If, say, you happened to insert your table and realize, oh dear, I didn't put enough rows in, you can add rows, and you can also add columns. So if you messed up there and you started typing before you realized you messed up, this is a great way to fix it. If you're at the very beginning and realized you messed up, you can just either hit the undo button up here or Control Z and try again. There's also a draw tool, and this one's kind of neat. I played around with it a bit just to see what it does. You can literally draw all sorts of things in here. It's not as dynamic as a image editor like Paint or Paint 3D or Photoshop or any of those more advanced stuff, but you can use it to make some shapes that you might need, or if you wanted to put a big arrow in to point towards something, you can do that with a line. You can add a little arrowhead to it and point to things. And then once you've got your image, it'll bring it back to the page. So let's say we don't want all of this stuff. We just want a nice little arrow to point to a specific thing we want to draw people's attentions to. We'll make an arrow, point, make it a little bigger so it's got a little more heft to it, and then poof, there it is in our document. And we can move it around and work with it just like you would any other image you inserted. Any questions?
I have one question related to tables. Is there a way to do headings that carry over from page to page?
As in, so let's see, and it looks like it's in reference to in tables. So like if you had, say, a table like that, and I assume it was a long enough one that it carried over, is what you're saying? Okay.
Yes.
I don't know if this has quite that functionality. If you're using a table that large and complex, I personally would recommend sticking to Sheets, which is the Google version of Excel, just because that'll give you a little more control over what happens with your spreadsheet. But if you're wanting to stick to Word, I don't think it would carry over just because it kind of treats the table much like any regular text. That would be something I'd have to tinker around with to see if I could find. We could look into that, but I do not know if that's something that's possible with this particular setup. Yeah, that's an interesting question. I'll have to look into that. My gut instinct on it is no, it can't be done, but I could very much be wrong. So I will look into that later, and I can definitely get back to you about that if you're interested, Philip. Yes, so another quick thing about tables, since we're talking about them, if you want something a little less, obtrusive than solid lines, you can change the borders up. This is kind of a quick access to it, but you can also click on them and adjust the borders specifically. So you can make them into dots and dashes. And I believe if you turn them to 0, yes, make them go away. So this is handy if, say, you're wanting to do say a multiple choice question that you want people to be able to answer, and you want to have the questions there, the answers they can select in multiple columns, but you don't want these lines to get in the way. You can get rid of those lines and just have the text visible, which is very nice. Bouncing back to columns, because I realized that we didn't cover all the bases on columns. So talking about our columns, and let's get rid of this extra stuff. We don't need it. So with columns, there is a nice aspect to them. If, say, you don't need columns throughout the entirety of your document, so something you'll want to do in changing that up, let me get us some columns here real quick. You can insert a break. Now, come down here. So a page break is a standard break that just pushes everything down to the bottom. So you've got the columns up here, the page break starts down here, and it keeps the formatting that you have from the previous one. So we've still got columns on both pages. But say you only want the columns on the first page, you can do insert, come down here to break, and instead of page break, you want to do a section break. Sections, when you break them up, can have different formats, different columns. They're a lot more flexible. So if you're wanting to have it broken up that way, you can do section breaks. And a continuous section break is just a break that happens within the same page. You can do that as well. So when I got rid of the columns the first time that I had the picture there, it automatically inserted a continuous section break with the image up at the top, and then the column started afterwards. So those are some nice aspects of ways of breaking up your document when you have columns involved. Any questions about those?
We have a question about making tabs for like making lists. Is that something you can easily demonstrate for
yes,
us?
I was just about to get into that. So perfect timing there. So this falls into the alignment of your page category. So along with your page setup with your margins, there is alignments that you can adjust. So let's move down to our new page here since we've already got it up. So tabs basically come from indenting. So when you hit the tab button, it does an automatic indent. And the default on this setup is exactly the same as the default on Word, which I believe comes to 1/2 of an inch. So you can change that a lot. So there's a bunch of different ways to deal with tabs. So if you want to deal with it on the toolbar, you can come up here, and these little icons here are what affect how much indenting is done, and also whether or not it's both the first line and the rest of the paragraph, or just the first line, or what's called a hanging indent, which is where the first line isn't indented, but the rest of the paragraph is, which is used in some forms of bibliographies. So we can move this here, and it'll automatically indent our text. Now, clicking on the arrow moves both of them simultaneously. So if you were wanting to have a hanging indent, you would move this one, which is the first line indent, back, and the rest of the lines, make some gobbledygook up here. There we go. The rest of the lines are indented. To do it the other way around, you have to bring it back here, move it here, and then just move the little bar, and that'll get you your more traditional first line indent of your paragraph. So you can also change these by coming into the toolbar up here. So you can increase your indent or decrease your indent up here. If you're making a list, The lists will automatically indent themselves. So let's say we decided we wanted to do some bullet points for our list. It automatically sets an indent there of where the dot ends up and where the text is. And then if you enter your information and then you want to make another sub line on your indent, you just hit tab and it changes the dot to a different style and it sets up the indent appropriately. If you realize, oh, I didn't want to do that, I need to get this further in, really the best way to do it to make sure you don't delete too much or mess up the alignment is to use decrease indent and it'll move it back. So you can use this to move it, or you can use the tab button to also move it. And that's with bullet points. You can use this for regular text too. It just doesn't have the changing bullet point set up there when you do that. So we can actually bounce back to our resume here and show you. So if, say, you were writing your text in your resume and you wanted to make some nice points with some bullets because it makes it really visible, it automatically, see how it pushes that in further, and then you can make a whole running list of your different topics. And if this was a subset of that one, there you go. If you didn't want to do that with noticeable bullet points, you can still move it in by using the increase indent. Now, it does do that as a solid block. So if you were wanting to do the first line indent, it would be better to drag this little guy up here. Or you can also get into doing it through the drop-down menu under Format, Align and Indent. You can decrease, increase here, but you can get into the options with more specifics here. So this is where you would select if you wanted a first line indent and hanging indent, or if you want to keep your paragraph all together in a block, and you can change that. Now, having a right indent, which is the opposite of your traditional indent, comes in really handy with resumes. So say I was wanting to have the company name and job title up at the top, but I don't want them side by side. I want them actually to be spread out onto either side of the page so that it's kind of distinct and visible. It's actually not too hard to do. You would want to come up to, now make sure I do this right. There. You use a tab stop, which if you right click up at the top here, tab stops are what tell the tab button where to deposit the text. So if you add a left tab stop right here, this little guy, it will, let's move it in a little more so you can see where the text ends up. Okay. Make sure I'm not clicking on the right thing. This because this one is a template. So in a template, tab will usually take you to the next section. So this isn't going to be the best place to demonstrate that. Let me move back over to my untitled document here. This one will work a little bit better. And that is the downside to working with templates, is it has some limitations. So let's try this again in a more visible way. So let's say we work for Best Company and the job title is Super Employee. Having them side by side, not the best. So with the tab stop here will move the text all the way over to it. And if it's a left tab stop, the text starts on the left side and keeps going. If you don't want your text to run over the end, a better option is actually to do a right tab stop. So let's see if I can get rid of my tab stop here. There we go. You can click and drag it off of the ruler bar to get rid of it. So if you add a right tab stop, this will keep your text on the page. And then as you type, it'll go to the left side, and that keeps it nice and neat if you're wanting to spread out your information. If you were to do a center tab stop, as you would expect, it centers it on the tab. So as you type, it spreads out in both directions. So that's just a little handy thing for orienting your text. Oh, and we are almost out of time. Goodness. Fortunately, we did cover a lot of stuff. So some basic tools that we should cover for sure is spelling and grammar. You can do spelling checks just like you can in Microsoft Word. You can see I've got all sorts of things spelled oh so wrong in here. It'll give you suggestions and you can work through them, ignore, accept. You can also add them to the dictionary. So if your name is spelled interestingly and you don't want it to constantly be flagging it, you can add your name to the dictionary. Very handy to have. Other tools, you can do a word count. This is super handy for if you are typing an article that has a word limit or a word minimum. Same with school documents and that sort of thing. You can do review suggested edits. This one is sometimes useful, sometimes not. There's a new feature that I haven't got to sample yet called compare documents. So this one I need to explore a bit, but it's a more advanced way of looking at things. And there's some other options on here like dictionary that you can use. And the voice typing is, it's okay. It's much like any other voice recognition software. It has its flaws, but it definitely can get stuff down, especially if you're trying to dictate. So there's some options there. We haven't even gotten to printing. So if you guys want to hang around a little bit longer, we can kind of run over our time and talk about printing and downloading documents, because that's also very important. So if y'all are all good with that, we will just keep chugging along. If not, you can feel free to drop out, and we'll put the recording up in a few days, send it so that you can watch it if you can't hang around due to a lunch break or other obligations. So let's jump over to printing a document. So let's say, back on our resume here, let's say we are all finished, it looks perfect, it's exactly how we want it. When you want to print, you come over to File here, or you can also use the little shortcut. That is an option there. So you can print by coming down to your print option here. You can also use Control P. So there's 3 ways to print. You can do Control P, which is the key shortcut. You can use the toolbar option, or you can use the drop-down window. So once you're ready to print, you get a lovely little preview here. You can zoom in and zoom out. This right here will fit it to the window or back to the page. You can see your settings. So your destination printer, you can make choices there. You can pick if you want to print all of the pages, or if you want to just print the first 2, last 2, every other. You can select a number of copies. So especially with a resume, you'll probably want to do like 10 or so that you can give out. Color options, and then of course, depending on the printer, your paper size will be limited to what's in the printer. You can also, say you have notes from a meeting and you don't want to use the sheer number of pages it would take to cover it. You can actually print 2 pages per sheet. It'll make it a lot smaller. It'll basically cut the paper in half and put 1 page on each half of it. But that's a nice way to get more information on there if you're wanting to, save a tree or 2. Other ways to save trees, you can also print double-sided, assuming the printer has that option. The default is to print along the long edge, which is how a book page is printed. But if you are printing something that you want to be able to flip-flop upside down, you can also change that to where it flips on the short edge. And those are all options there. You can also pick quality. Usually this isn't something that's noticeable, but if you're printing out graphics, you may want to pick the higher quality. So yes, you've got all those options. And you might have seen it actually when I was scrolling through the destination options. You can save it as a PDF through here or save it to your Google Drive. say you wanted to save this particular one but plan to edit more, this is one option of how to do that. But if you're wanting to save it as a PDF instead for mailing purposes, or you want to email it or upload it to a service that uploads documents, like a lot of the job application sites have places to upload your documents. A lot of homework sites also have places for you to upload your work for your class. PDF is a good option to limit the format shifting. It will come out exactly as you see it. It is forever in that way. The only downside is it's not editable by anything other than Adobe editing software, which a lot of people don't have. But that may be why you want to pick a PDF. Some other options, you can also download it as a Microsoft Word document. Now this is where you'll get basically the opposite of what you have with the uploads. You'll sometimes get formatting errors that occur because of the difference between Docs and Google Docs. But these are typically PDF and Word documents are your usual ones that you see people downloading as. There are other options, but these typically, especially the plain text, it's going to literally be just plain text. You can also email as an attachment, which is another option if you're trying to get your document to somebody else. Since you are already connected to a Gmail account, it will be sending from that Gmail. You type in who you're sending it to, and you have all these options here. You can also send yourself a copy, which is handy if you are wanting to keep track of what you've sent. Can add a little short message letting them know, hey, I'm sending you something. There are a couple of options. You can pick the style of the document it's going to be. You can send it in Word or PDF or any of these other ones. Now, you don't send it as a doc, because if you were sending a doc, you'd actually just send the link to it and allow people to come in and see it in your own folder. You can include it into the email, which ends up looking fairly interesting. Let's see if I can get my email up here real quick so I can show you what it looks like. 1 second, because I sent one to myself not too long ago. It basically does like a mini version of a PDF in your email. Here it is. So this is a good way if you're wanting somebody to proofread what you've done, but you don't want them to edit it. It puts it directly in the email and they can see it right there in their email. So that's an option. And you can also make a copy. So this is really handy if you're doing a lot of editing and you don't want to mess up your original document. Making a copy makes a duplicate of the document, and then any edits that you do on that copy do not affect the original. This is great for if you're doing resumes for multiple fields of jobs so that you can tailor each resume to that job. A very handy tool there. And then you can also share, if you're wanting to keep just the document, you can share it to other people by sending them a link. And by doing that, you can pick whether or not you want them to edit. So let me pick, let's say, let's send it to our friend Jamie. Now, because it's not a Gmail, she won't be able to show up in the document. It actually will show up as an anonymous other person that's viewing your document, but you can give access to people who don't have Gmail. It doesn't limit their ability to edit. It doesn't limit their ability to comment or view. It just means that they're not identified by who they are based on their email. So you can select editor, which means that they'll be able to change the content, commenter, which means they can only leave comments, or viewer, which means literally they just can only view the document. They can't do anything to touch it or change it. So those are some ways of granting access to your document while keeping it in docs format. All right, any questions? I know we covered that last bit in a bit of a hurry. If you have any other questions, I will gladly answer them. We'll kind of leave this as that time to cover any topics that didn't get touched on that you're interested in. Okay, well, that's an easy question. It automatically saves. You do not ever have to hit save. It is constantly saving. And that's the big perk of working in a cloud environment, is what it's called. It's saving to a server elsewhere constantly. So you don't have to ever remember to hit the save button. If your computer crashes on you, it will save the last change that it saved. And usually it will save as you edit. So like right now it says, last edit was 12 minutes ago. Since I haven't typed anything, it hasn't done anything to save. But if I were to say, hello, how are you? It updates that to when it is. And it shows that it's saving up at the tippy top. It's pretty quick, so you may not ever even notice that it's saying it. Let's see. Yeah, there it goes. So you can see while you're typing, it's literally saving. Ooh, how many undos? That actually is a good question. I have not exhausted it. I believe it will undo everything that you've done in that session. So if you closed out of a document, it starts it at square one when you open it up again. We could find out with this one. I've definitely done a lot of changes on it. Let's see. It may take me a while to get there though. Yep, there you go, all the way back. Now, I have not tested this on an extensive document that's had changes upon changes, but yeah. Let's see, what else? So yes, there are add-ons. That would be an advanced class. The option to get to them, if you're interested, is up here, and you can get add-ons by clicking there. And there are some really neat add-ons out there, but I would definitely say that is advanced Google Docs, not Google Docs Basic. But if you're interested, you can search what's available under the G Suite Marketplace, and there's a lot out there to really get what you need to do. If, say, you're wanting to do a bibliography, that's here. If you aren't sure what you need, you can try searching up here or doing a Google search for it, because this limits kind of what it's looking for. A Google search, you could possibly type in, I need an add-on to do blank, and it'll have some suggestions that people have used before. But add-ons have a lot of interesting features that you can use. Any other questions? Okay, in tables, I see something called distribute rows. What does that mean? That's a good question. Let me see. It's been a while since I've worked in a table on Google Docs. Let's see. My assumption is it distributes the rows evenly, but let's find out, shall we? All right, got a table. Distribute rows. So let's see, maybe let's try messing our rows around a little bit and see if that does what I think it does. Distribute rows. No, I don't know what that does. I'm not 100% sure about that. That I would have to look into. That one is a little more advanced than I've dealt with.
It looks like it's basically going to spread out the spacing of everything so that it is aligned nicely to space your table rows and columns evenly.
Let's see if it actually will do it. I'm curious. I don't know. That one would definitely, I think, require some playing with because I have not messed with it before. Yep. Well, there you go. Yeah, it does. I was playing with the columns and not the rows. Again, bad brain day. So yeah, it looks like it evenly distributes them. So if we were to mess with the rows and you end up with things not lining up pretty, distribute rows brings it back and spreads it out. So it distributes it between the top and bottom though. So halfway between those, or if you have 3 rows, a third of the way between your top and bottom of your table. Yay, we figured it out. Oh, yeah, that's a little more advanced than our basics, but that's okay. I'm enjoying figuring that one out. Any other questions before we go? We'll call it a day if we don't have any more. Feel free to ask any questions through our Book a Librarian option. We can do 30-minute sessions to assist you with some basic tech questions related to stuff like Google Docs and other things. Miss Jamie, if you could provide us a link to Book a Librarian, that would be really handy in the chat window.
Give me 1 second to pull it up for you.
So the tiny square at the top is actually available for each of the cells, and if you have it highlighted, it'll be there too. This is just a borders shortcut, so if you wanted to mess with the borders and change what they look like, it's a little shortcut to get there. I haven't messed with one of these too much, but in theory, it will change all of that. Of course, right now we've got all the borders up, so it's not going to be a great demonstration of that. Let's see. Oh, and another fun little insert that I didn't get to share but is handy is the horizontal line. So this is nice if you're wanting to have a little visual break in there. It puts it between the 2 lines of text that you have there. It actually occupies its own little line of text, technically, but that's a great way to visually divide text that you're working with. You can also insert a chart, though you need some actual information for that, but you can pull it from your sheets if you're interested in doing that. You can also insert links, but you can also do that by copying, pasting the links as well. Table of contents is also a handy one, but that's a little more advanced. All right, well, we'll call it a day. Thank you all for coming. We appreciate your attendance. There should be a pop-up survey that comes up after you're logging out. If you have the time to fill that out, please do. It lets us know how we did, what more you'd like to learn, if there's things that we could have covered better, or if there are things that we touched on but you wanted to go more in depth on, let us know and we can look at developing classes in the future. We will also send out an email that comes out, I believe, 4 days after the program that includes a link to the recording as well as another link to that survey if you didn't get a chance to fill it out. So we appreciate you coming out. Thank you so much. Oh, and we do hope that you join us for Google Sheets in 2 weeks. We will be covering how to use the basics of that. And that one is going to be very basic because you can get very in-depth into Sheets. So we'll just cover the very basics of that and get you started.